Hey guys, today I am going to be soaking, pre-sprouting and then planting out Ranunculus. For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Peggy and I am growing a cut flower garden here on my allotment in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan, which is just south of Tokyo in USDA Zone 9B. Thanks for checking out my channel. Okay, so I grew Ranunculus and anemone in the garden last year, although I didn't get to put them in my allotment because I didn't have the allotment then, so I was growing them here in containers. And I did this, I pre-sprouted them, I soaked them, I pre-sprouted them, and then I planted them out. And I did them on the same day as I did my anemone, but I ended up getting my anemone a full month before any of my Ranunculus came, which meant that I was having to make arrangements with just anemone flowers because nothing else had come out. So I'm doing it a bit differently this time, and I'm going to start my Ranunculus early, well, now, and I'm going to leave off and do my anemone in a couple of weeks' time to try and make sure that I get things at the same time. Having said that, I didn't actually dig up my anemones from last year. I did dig up and separate my Ranunculus, but I couldn't actually find my anemone bulbs. They're really hard to find in the mud, and I thought that, hello, helping? I thought that maybe they had all rotted or they'd been eaten or they just weren't going to be viable. But in the last few weeks, this has happened in my planter. And I mean, I haven't even sprouted my new ones, and these have already got really big. So I think I'm going to have some early anemone as well. But that's great. It just means I'll have some early and then I'll have the ones that I'm doing in a couple of weeks' time and see what the difference in them coming up is. But I'm really glad that these have come back. Okay, so as I just mentioned, I dug up some of my Ranunculus from last year. Now, I got nowhere near as many as I planted, but they had started to make, you could separate them out and pull the claws apart. So I do have some really tiny claws, but that was quite a while ago. And you can see they're all looking pretty dried and crispy. So I'm not sure how many of these are going to be viable, but that is basically what we're going to find out today. So if you look at a Ranunculus corm, some people say they kind of, let's find a nice one, they look a bit like an octopus. They've got all these little hairy legs on them. And this is them all dried out. So if you order them or buy them new, this is what they're going to look like. Are you stealing my water? Don't get your sleeves wet. Go, go. There you go. So the legs are all dried out like this. And when you buy them new, that's what they look like as well. So here are some new ones that I got, and you can see these are much bigger than the ones I've dug up, but like I say, I separated mine. So the first thing that you have to do is soak them. So I have a bucket full of water here, and I am literally just going to take these guys, all of these, and pop them in my water. Okay, so I am planning on doing a little experiment this year to see how the new ones do compared to my saved Ranunculus. I know that a lot of flower farmers don't save their Ranunculus corms, they buy new ones each year, and I just want to see what the difference in the flower production is. If I get less flowers or they're just shorter flowers or the quality isn't as good. So I'm going to do a little experiment. So because of that, I don't want to mix up the corms, but handily, these guys come in these little mesh bags, which are waterproof. So I'm just going to hang these over the side of my bucket in their mesh bag, so that I can keep the two sets of corms completely separate. Now, I haven't bought any speciality ones here. You don't get a massive variety of Ranunculus corms available in the shops here. I mean, they do have Ranunculus breeders in Japan, and I've spent a long time trying to find out how you buy from them, but it's kind of complex and they only seem to do wholesale. So I have to just get these mixed ones. So I don't really know what I'm going to get. They're not as pretty as I would really like some of the salmon ones. I mean, I guess that's kind of salmon-y. I would like some of the kind of fancier Ranunculus, but for me, this will do. I'm still learning just how to grow them, so start with the basics. So I have 3 packs of the same mixed ones, and I'm just going to pop them in like this for these corms to soak. Okay, so the point of doing this is that the corms are dehydrated, so you want to kind of give them a boost to get them starting to grow, and that's why you're going to let them swell up. But you don't want to leave them in there too long. They will drown, basically, and when you try and take them out, they'll just fall apart, they'll crumble apart. So I'm only going to leave these in for a couple of hours. Some people do like to make sure that there's still air going in there, so I've seen some people leave the tap running while they're doing it, but I can't bring myself to do that. It just seems like such a waste of water. Even if it's just a little dribble, I don't like 2 hours, 4 hours of a little dribble of water. No. Other people use a small pump from a fish tank to keep the air bubbles going, which seems like a better idea. You're not wasting the water. But I don't have one. So I am just going to make sure that I change this water out every hour to make sure that there is still some air in the water, and just check how my corms are doing. Check on them every hour to make sure that they're getting bigger, but they're not getting too big that they're falling apart. And so we're just going to leave them and wait. Waiting. This is them. Nice and fat. Okay, so it's been about 2 hours since I put these guys in the bucket. That one's just fallen in. And if we have a look at these now, you can see they're much more pumped up. Nice and fat and juicy looking. Like that, look at that. That's what you want them to look like. So they're all filled up and juicy and ready to go. And you can see the ones that were in the bags are much fatter and plumper too. So I'm going to have a look in the bucket, take them out and see how many of mine I think are going to be viable from last year, and then put them in some soil to get them started with the pre-sprouting. Okay, so in total I have 59. Obviously, some look a lot healthier than others, but I will start them all and see how they do. Okay, so to pre-sprout these, I just have an open tray which I have filled with pre-moistened soil. I do still have the bag underneath it because it does have holes to drain the water on the bottom and I don't want my soil to spill everywhere. So this is just pre-moistened soil in a tray, and I'm just going to place these on top. When you're planting these, this is the top, and you want these facing down. Because we're not actually waiting for these to grow, this is just to pre-sprout, you can put them really close together because they're only going to be in here for a couple of weeks. If that, maybe just 10 days. And then we'll move them out to where they're going to grow. So that's all my ones in. Now I want to put these new ones in. They are substantially bigger. I hope I've got enough room in my tray. Oops. You can see these are huge. But I only get 5 corms in each bag, which is not very many. Oh, 6, there's a little one in there as well. So as you can see, the ones that you get in the bag vary hugely in size as well. I mean, that's got so many clumps on it. You could actually pull that apart into a few different plants. So if you look at this close up, it's quite evident which are the new ones and which are my older ones. But that doesn't always mean you're going to get different plants, so let's just wait and see. Now I'm just going to cover these over a little bit with the soil, not very much. Oops, pulled one out. And then I will put them somewhere cold and dark, or cool and dark, for 10 days to 2 weeks until I start to see little sprouts coming off them. And they should get some roots coming out the bottom as well. Okay, it's now been about a week since I started my Ranunculus corms, and I'm going to give you a little look at them. So as you can see, I've kind of dug through, and some of them are starting to put out shoots, which is exactly what we want them to be doing. So these ones are the ones that are pre-sprouting, and these are actually mostly, in fact all of them, are my ones from last year that are coming through. But also, worryingly, I'm starting to get a bit of fuzzy mould, which I'm not happy about. And these are all of the big new corms. So if I pull one out, yeah. But the corm itself is not soggy. It looks like it's okay. So I'm going to try and save these. I'm going to take them out of here. I'm going to think that maybe there was something in the soil that's making this happen. And I had them in my little shed, and I don't think there's very good airflow in there, so that might be causing it as well. So I am going to take these out of here and change the soil and then leave them sitting here with just something on top to block out the light. And hope that that mould doesn't get any worse. But that is not good. Okay, so I have emptied out my tray and I have separated out all of my bulbs, and I'll show you what I've got. Corms, sorry. So these are my ones that I dug up from last year, and I have 30 that have started to sprout and 19 that haven't done anything yet. Now these are still okay, they're still hard. They're still a bit moist, so they just haven't started sprouting. And you can see that some of these are putting out, oh, can you see that? Quite a lot of roots. They're starting to get lots of roots on them, while as others have only just started to have some kind of start peeking out the top. So it's all kind of different levels of how much these have sprouted, but they're all starting to get new roots on them. These ones, not yet. And these are my new ones, which are the mouldiest, and none of them have started sprouting at all. I also then have these ones over here. Now, even though these ones are mouldy, you can see there's a bit of mould on that. The corm is actually still solid. It's not soggy. It's still a nice solid corm, so I'm hoping that I might still be able to rescue that. Whereas these ones over here, these are just too mushy. These have rotted away and they're just too soft and mushy, and I don't think they're going to do anything. Yeah, that one's almost completely gone. You know, it's kind of hard to distinguish where the corm is and where the soil is. So I'm going to say these ones are lost, so 5 lost. These ones sprouting, these ones not sprouting yet but still good, and these ones, the new ones that are nearly all mouldy. I think I only had one mouldy one in here, and it was just a tiny bit as well. So I don't know what's going on with these new corms, but I'm going to refill with new soil in here and get them going again. Okay, so this is hello. This is fresh soil. I've put them back in. I've taken out the mouldy ones. I've covered them and dampened them just a little bit, and then I'm going to put that over here. Now, it's still not very cold here, so I don't have to worry about the frost getting them. They'll get better airflow than they were getting here. And I know that this isn't completely covered, but it's covered enough. The reason that you cover them is because you really want them to focus on root growth and not putting out leaves and stalks and stuff yet. And if they're got sunlight, then that's what they're going to do. So I'll just cover them a little bit, but I'm not going to leave them in there much longer. I really want to get these guys in the ground pretty soon. So that's them for now. Let's see how they do and hope that that mould is under control. Okay, so it's now been another week, and you can see these have all started to pre-sprout. These are all the ones from my garden that I dug up. This is where I put those big new juicy ones, and I did go through this a couple of days ago and found that most of those had rotted and I had to take them out. And the ones that are left are much slower to come up than the others. So I'm going to have a dig around in here and see what the other ones are doing and show you what's happened to them. Okay, first when we look at the pre-sprouted ones, the ones that we can clearly see are doing stuff, if we dig them up very carefully, you can see just how much of a root network these guys have now made. And then they've started to put up their shoots as well. So I mean, that's great. On the bigger ones, you can see, sorry, there's people playing tennis behind me. So this is one there, you can just see a tiny shoot coming up, but it has definitely put out roots as well. So that one's ready to go in as well. So what is happening in the rest? I've got roots and roots. Okay, so this is one of the big ones. And although it didn't have any sprouts coming above, you can see there's lots of roots on it, and it does actually have 2 tiny little shoots about to come out there. So at least one. But that's one that's done nothing. I mean, you can't even see where the soil ends and the tuber starts, and it's soft and it's squidgy. So that is a rotten one. This one too. It's another rotten one. It's doing nothing. It's kind of soft and squidgy to the touch. It's put out no roots. It's a goner. So I don't know if there was something wrong with the ones I bought. Why so much of them have rotted. There's another one, and it was one of the big ones. And again, you can't really separate it from the soil, and it's soft and squidgy. That one looks alright. It's got a few sprouts coming out it. This is one of the few that's actually done quite well. This one looks like it's not done very much, but it does actually. It's the smaller one, and it has one shoot coming out it. So I was going to do an experiment about which ones did better, my ones from last year or the new ones that I bought, but I've literally only got maybe 4 of the new ones that didn't rot out of the 2 packets that I planted. Oh look, I think this one might be okay. It's not done much, but it has put out a tiny shoot. So I think I'll have to leave that experiment till next year. Oh look at this one, that's one of my ones from my garden, and it's just a tiniest little bit of corm, but it's still put out a nice big shoot. But it's not all bad news, because even though I lost most of my new ones, which is very annoying, it has actually, I found out this week, I must have missed some when I was digging up the corms last year. And lots of these, which is the container I had them in last year, lots of these have started to come up. Now, they didn't do well last year because my garden has terrible growing conditions, which is why I have an allotment in the first place. So I'm also going to... Yay! I'm also going to dig these up and very carefully move them to the allotment as well. So, although I lost a lot, I have got more than I thought I would, because these ones have still come back for me. Okay, I'm down on the allotment with my ranunculus, and it's a bit chilly today. Whew. The temperature has definitely dropped. But not everything has died back in my garden, and so I'm having to change my plan a little bit. So according to my garden plan, my ranunculus was going to be going in here, but as you can see, my firecracker vine has only just started to flower, and is still huge and putting out lots, so I can't put it there. And my plan was that I would have my ranunculus in for my spring flower and have my rudbeckia in here as well, and then when the ranunculus died back, the rudbeckia would come up. But I've got some rudbeckia in here, and as you can see, it's still quite big and bushy, and seems to be, that's a weed, seems to be kind of filling out and keeping its green. Now I don't know if it'll keep this way throughout the whole winter, or if it will eventually die back, but it's taking up a bit too much room here for me to actually plant it here. So I think I can't put my ranunculus here at all. This is just going to be dedicated to rudbeckia, because my plan is to put a lot more rudbeckia in here this year. I've started some at home already, and I hope that this will be a whole big block of rudbeckia, which looks like it's going to have to just be rudbeckia. It doesn't look like I'm going to be able to plant things on the same patch. If you interplant with rudbeckia, let me know what works well with it, so that I can kind of maybe factor that in for next year's plan. But for this year, can't put my ranunculus here either. So it looks like it's gonna have to go in here. Now this is where I had my snapdragon last year, and I learned that it's too shady here because above me we have plum trees. For the snapdragon, the plum trees were bad because they created too much shade and meant that the snapdragon were searching for the sun, and they kind of all got squiggly wiggly while they were looking for the sun, so that was bad. But for my ranunculus, I'm thinking that that'll be good because it'll keep them shaded for a little bit longer once obviously these trees put leaves on in spring, and it will help them stay cooler because we go from cold weather to hot weather really fast. So I'm thinking this will be a good spot. Now this was where I was going to put my lupin for exactly the same reason. Lupin don't like to be hot, and I thought that this would be a nice little shady space for them. But now I'm gonna have to swap that out and put my ranunculus here, and I'll move my lupin down to the other end where the firecracker vine is now, because by the time my lupin are ready to go in, that'll be done. That's what I'm going to do. But first, I need to weed it because it's a mess. Okay, that's it all weeded. Now I am going to go over it with the big Japanese hoe and help with the compression. I was calling that compaction in my last video. I actually meant compression. I'm sorry. I don't speak English much anymore and my vocabulary is shocking. So I'm going to go over, I'm not actually going to turn the soil, I'm just going to try and break it up a little, get some air down into the roots, or the root layer rather. and try and break up especially where I've been walking along the sides. It gets really, really compacted. So I need to break that down first. Whew. Okay, the support netting really gets in the way when you're doing that, and I had this on last year in the spring for my Snapdragon, and I'd left it on because I thought I was putting my loop in here and they would need it as well, but now I'm not putting my loop in here, so the Ranunculus don't get that tall. They're not a huge big tall flower, so I don't think I actually need this. I might take it off because I'll need it when I do put my loop in down at the bottom. So let's get rid of this so that it's easier to plant. Looks like I was really lazy when I put that on as well. It wasn't even tied on. That's shocking. Anyway, now that the weeds are out, you can see that it's not actually all weeds in this plot. I do actually have a couple of things growing. So right down here at the bottom, I have some Docus dara. Now this is a biennial, so it sets seed. Anyway, you grow it from seed the first year and it puts down roots and just a little bit of this. And then the following year, it will give you flowers. Are we going to call them flowers? I guess they're flowers. Now, I had some of this in my garden at the beginning of the year, and it sat like this for a year, and I looked after it for the whole year, and then it got up and it was just starting to get flowers on it, and a storm took it out because these guys have really, really shallow roots. That's really hard to say when you're wearing braces. They have very shallow roots, so the first storm that came just disrupted the roots and the whole thing died. And so I've been trying to grow it now. This is my third year and I still haven't had a single cut of Docus. But I've seen it and I really like it. I like the colour of it. This is a really kind of dark purpley colour as a filler, or a kind of disc element in your bouquets. So I'm really hoping that I'll get some this year. Now I've only had 2 that have survived and made it this far, but I'm hoping that this year I'll get some Docus. And then next to that, I've got this. This is ponytails, which are kind of like the big, long, feathery, stick-looking things. They should have a slightly pink blush to them as well. Now, I didn't get any of these again last year. They didn't do anything for me, but then I found that these 2 seeds had germinated, so I put them in. They are actually very close to each other. They weren't originally. They moved when they were quite young seedlings. It tells you what the rainy season is like here. It was originally here, and the whole plant just migrated over here. So they look to be doing okay. They're starting to put out new shoots down here at the bottom. And these will get really big and fill out. So although these look really small now, I've got my 2 Docus here and my ponytail there. They look really tiny now, but I think they will fill up this whole area because they do get big and they do get tall. And while the Docus is a biennial, so I'll have to technically replant it in the spring to get it the following year, which I'm not sure I will. I'm going to see if this actually manages to survive the stormy season here before I waste another 2 years trying to get anything. But the ponytails is a perennial, so that will stay where it is and hopefully give me foliage for the next couple of years. So that one's going to basically now take over this whole part of the garden. The idea I had this year was that this whole backstretch would end up being perennials, so that I definitely had something in the garden, and that over time the plants would get used to the heat here and the really weird conditions that we have. You know, we have a really mild winter, which is great, but then a very short spring, and then rainy season, and then a very hot summer, and then typhoon season. So, you know, the flowers here do have to put up with a lot to survive. So if I can get them accustomed to that, I'm hoping that over the years I will end up with a much stronger garden, growing perennials rather than annuals. And if I am going to grow annuals, once I get a few more successful flowers, I've not found anything that I really love yet, I will start seed collecting, so that the seed that I am collecting has been grown in this climate, and hopefully that it will therefore be stronger. It's my plan. I mean, it's a plan. I don't know if it will actually work, but that's what we're aiming for. Anyway, so these guys are in this part of the garden, which means I have this part to put in Ranunculus. So I guess the first thing I have to do is go through this box and figure out how many Ranunculus I actually have, because I don't know. Okay, ta-da! I didn't bring anything to wipe my hands. What an idiot. Huh. 73! I've ended up with 73 Ranunculus. I am really happy with that. It's a lot more than I thought. So now I just have to figure out how I'm going to fit them all into here. Now, I know that I can put ranunculus quite close together, like say last year I was growing them in containers, so they were very close together. They don't get a huge amount, or at least mine didn't get a huge amount of foliage, but I want to leave these in the ground this year, and having seen how many of the corms grew last year and made new ones, I want to leave room for them to expand so that the following spring I'll have even more, and they won't start to too quickly crowd each other out. So I need to figure out how many rows and how many flowers in each row. Okay. I have too many ranunculus. Something I thought I would never say. I'm just going to have to squeeze these guys in somewhere. That looks good. Now I'm just going to dig them in. Ranunculus! I got ranunculus! Yes, job's a good one. And that is it, ranunculus planted. It's really nice. I got this allotment 2 years ago, and when I got it, nobody had used it for about a year, I think. And the person before, based on what I found in the garden, was growing mostly potatoes. And the soil was baked solid. It was just an actual crust on top of the soil and then rock hard. I assume that maybe whatever they'd been using, as well as potatoes, they'd been using maybe weed cloth on top, and it had just baked the soil, and it was so hard and so hard to work. And putting these ranunculus in now, after 2 years of me amending the soil, adding to it, adding organic matter to it, doing I do a no dig, so I haven't been turning my soil at all. I just tried to decompress it and add air to it. And it's so easy to work and so beautiful and such a lovely dark brown colour. I mean, it did rain last night, so it's kind of wet, but it's not holding the wet, it's not mushy. It's really, really nice. And it's a strange feeling to be proud of your mud. But I'm really happy with my mud. It's good mud. The benefit of having these plum trees behind me is that they've dropped a load of leaves. Ranunculus do not like to get cold. Now, we don't really get a solid frost here in zone 9B, but still I'm going to gather up some of those leaves and put them over my ranunculus just to give them a little bit of extra protection in case we do get a couple of really cold nights. If we do, that won't be till February. You know, we're still a long way off. But I just want to make sure that they are nicely protected. There's nothing around here, I hope, that's going to eat them. There's no mosquitoes today. Look, no mosquitoes on my head. A whole video with no mosquitoes on my head, and I didn't have to wear my net. Yes. But that is the garden almost ready for winter and all set for hopefully, lots of flowers come spring. So thanks for watching along so far. If you want to see how this progresses and what happens with the garden, remember to hit the subscribe button below. If you want to see the things that I've been making with my garden, the flowers from my garden, I've dried a lot. I've started to make wreaths and some kind of dried decoration with that stuff, and you can look back on all of the flowers from this season. You can check out my Instagram, which is From the Witch's Garden, and I'll put a link to that below, and I will see you next week for planting out our anemone. Bye.